All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to talk about something you're feeling right now. Heat. I mean, it's everywhere, right? It warms your coffee, it powers our entire world. But what is it, really? You might be surprised to find out the answer is way stranger and, frankly, a lot more interesting than you'd expect.
I mean, we all kind of get what heat is, don't we? You feel it from the sun, a campfire, that hot mug in your hands. It feels obvious, but, when scientists actually tried to pin down a precise definition, well, that's where the story gets really tricky.
Believe it or not, for centuries, the smartest people on the planet couldn't quite figure this out. And here's the kicker. A lot of what we think of as common sense about heat, it's actually just leftover ideas from old, wrong theories. So let's do a little time traveling and see where things first went off track. Okay, so for a really long time, the leading theory about heat was, well, it was super elegant and also completely wrong.
The idea was actually pretty simple. People thought heat was this invisible, weightless fluid. They called it caloric. So a hot object was just an object full of this caloric stuff. A cold object had less. And if you put them next to each other, well, the caloric would just flow from the hot thing to the cold thing until they balanced out. You got to admit, it makes a certain kind of sense, right?
And this caloric theory, it seemed to explain heat transfer perfectly. But it had one huge, massive blind spot: friction. Go ahead, rub your hands together right now. They're getting warm, aren't they? So here's the question for the caloric theory. Where's that caloric fluid coming from? You're not grabbing it from anywhere. And that simple, everyday observation, that's what was going to bring the whole theory crashing down.
So here's the fundamental problem. The caloric theory says that heat is a substance, and you can't create or destroy a substance, right? It has to be conserved. But friction is like a little heat factory. As long as you keep rubbing, you can keep making more and more heat, basically out of thin air. The theory just had no answer for that. It completely fell apart.
This whole friction puzzle forced everyone back to the drawing board. And the big breakthrough? It came from a Scottish chemist named Joseph Black with a surprisingly simple experiment, just involving a glass of melting ice. And this is the moment where we finally separate the idea of heat from its very close and very confusing cousin, temperature. Okay, so get this. Black is steadily adding heat to a block of ice, but he's watching his thermometer, and for a really long time, nothing. It doesn't budge. It just stays stuck at 0 degrees Celsius, even as the ice is melting. So the million-dollar question is, where did all that heat energy go? If it wasn't making things hotter, what was it doing? Well, it was busy doing something else entirely. It was breaking the ice apart, changing it from a solid into a liquid.
And this led to a really key distinction. There's sensible heat. That's the heat you can, well, sense. It's the energy that makes particles jiggle around faster and makes the number on your thermometer go up. But then there's latent heat. Think of it like hidden heat. That's the energy that's being used for a different job, breaking the bonds that hold a substance together to change its state. Like turning solid ice into liquid water.
This discovery was a total game changer. It paved the way for our modern understanding and completely rewrote the rulebook on what heat actually is. All right, so here it is, the big reveal. Heat is not a substance. And this is super important. It's not something an object has. An object has something called internal energy. That's all the random jiggling of its atoms. Heat is the name we give to the process of that energy moving from a hotter place to a colder place. I love this way of thinking about it. Heat is a verb, not a noun. It's what energy does.
The legendary physicist James Clerk Maxwell basically summed up this new idea into 4 key points. 1. Heat can be transferred. 2. You can measure it. 3. It is absolutely not a substance. And 4, and this is the big one, it's just one of the many forms of energy.
So if heat is just another form of energy, like the energy of motion or electrical energy, then it stands to reason we should measure it with the same units, right? This meant all those old specialized units like the calorie or the BTU, they kind of had to go. They were replaced by the one official universal unit for all energy.
And that unit is the Joule. So, it doesn't matter if you're talking about the work a machine is doing, the energy stored in a battery, or the heat flowing from your stove into a pot of water. In the language of science, it's all the same stuff, and it's all measured in joules.
Okay, so why does any of this matter? Who cares if heat is a substance or energy in transfer? Why is that distinction so important? Well, to put it simply, it's the foundation of our entire modern world. It's because of this. If heat is just energy flowing from a hot place to a cold place, well, then we can be clever about it. We can get in the middle of that flow, snatch some of that moving energy, and make it do useful things for us. In a word, we can make it do work.
And that right there is the basic principle of every heat engine. It's a simple three-step dance. Step 1, you grab some heat from a hot source, like burning fuel. Step 2, you use a chunk of that energy to do work. Push a piston in your car, spin a massive turbine in a power plant, whatever. And step 3, you dump the leftover waste heat into a cold place, like the air around us. That simple cycle, that's what powers pretty much everything.
And here's what's so cool. If you take that exact same principle and you run it in reverse, you get refrigeration, you get air conditioning. You use work, say from an electric motor, to force heat to go where it doesn't want to go naturally. You make it flow from a cold place, like the inside of your fridge, out into a warmer place, like your kitchen. It's the same physics, just backwards. All right, so let's boil this all down to the absolute key takeaways. Number 1, heat is not a substance. Number 2, heat is not the same thing as temperature. And number 3, heat is energy in the process of being transferred. Just like we said before, and it's worth repeating. Think of it as a verb, not a noun.
So this whole new way of thinking about heat leaves us with one last kind of mind-bending question. If all energy transfers eventually become heat, and heat always spreads out from hot to cold, what's the ultimate fate of the universe? I mean, what happens when everything, every star, every planet, reaches the exact same temperature? What happens when there's just nowhere left for the heat to flow? Now that is something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.